What happens when you take a game like, say, Fortnite or Minecraft, and then they get attracted to another game called Pokemon, and things get going after a few dates, whoops, a baby is born, and that baby is going to be called Palworld, and this is going to be a deep dive, so stick with me as we go through pretty much everything that we know about Palworld and really what you'll need to know to get a grasp and understand so you can jump in all the knowledge you really need. Welcome to Palworld, launching to early access on January 19, 2024, so just next week. Palworld isn't just another addition to the gaming universe that we won't think twice about. It's a game-breaking fusion of genres, promising to really shake things up, developed by the innovative minds at Pocket Pair, known for their solid titles like Craftopia. Palworld combines that familiar thrill of survival and crafting with that novel excitement of creature collection. Palworld blends in the whimsical with the wild in a way that's never really been done before. As mentioned, it is scheduled for early access, and that's hitting Steam and Xbox Game Pass from day one, which is Jan the 19th. This game is gearing up to be a huge game changer, which has been flying on the radar for most. It's set in a rich, detailed world. It offers an all-encompassing gaming experience that is as deep as it is diverse, from intense survival challenges to the thrill of a creature combat. Palworld promises a journey that both is familiar, like Pokemon, and also fantastically fresh, adding in guns and shooting while having your your pals right next to you. So if you're like me and you've been longing for a game that's not your typical cutesy creature collection, but with something with a bit more of a bite, a bit more of an edge, keep your eyes peeled for Palworld. At the very heart of Palworld lies the concept of pals. These creatures are not just for show. They are central to your survival, your strategies, and the way you engage with the game world. Pals in Palworld transcend typical creature collection aspect common in many games, offering a much richer and integrated experience. This is because your companion pals can wield weapons, assist in crucial survival tasks, and even help in crafting, farming, and even production line kind of processes. Pals are deeply woven into the Palworld's core mechanics, making your interaction with them pivotal to your gaming experience. Your pals are as diverse as the world itself. Each pal comes with its unique ability and traits, influencing the game in various ways. They can be formidable allies in battle, but their role extends much further beyond just combat, that a player can interact with in multiple ways, play an integral part to both survival and combat, with some being able to wield weapons. They can build, heal, dig, climb, and do a barrage of different things. But basically, to summarize it, they're just like Pokemon. They're your pal, they follow you around, you use like a Pokeball kind of thing, capture them. But this goes into a whole other level of detail. We're going to go through some of those. We're going to look at how to catch pals. There are going to be some very striking similarities and then some drastic kind of never seen sort of elements to this process. So you'll be walking around in the wild, then you'll stumble across a pal. You'll be able to throw spheres. Now there's going to be different types of spheres, similar to how there's Pokeballs, Great Balls. There'll be like your basic pal sphere, then there'll be a mega sphere, hyper sphere, and a legendary sphere, which is pretty cool. So I'm guessing legendary spheres are going to be able to allow us to catch some of the rarer legendary or potentially mixed breeds. But I'm guessing it's going to be quite a similar mechanic to, say, Pokemon, with how that game mechanic works. But each sphere is kind of designed for a different pal type, which will be adding to a layer of tactical planning to your captures. But the general idea is still the same as other concepts. Catching pals, particularly aggressive ones, requires strategy. We'll have to weaken the pals before capturing them. And this process again will change between the different types of pals, which should bring like a unique challenge to capturing each different one, which we currently know there's 100 of them, plans to have more added. Some other interesting aspects that are going to impact the capture chance will be the distance we throw spheres. The closer we are, the more likely in chance of an increased capture, and the further away we throw it, there's going to be of less of an impact, so less of a capture chance increase. So Palworld adds the additions of adding weapons and also your companions that can also attack and damage aggressive or pals that you're looking to capture. And a really cool helpful display when capturing pals is that you'll be able to see what kind of percent chance you have of capturing that pal. Now generally when you find a pal out in the wild, the chance will start at 0. This could change depending on the type of pal you have and what items you're currently using. A bit unclear at this stage, so don't quote me on that, but generally you'll come across them, they'll be on 0% chance to capture. And you'll notice as you throw a sphere at it, it will increase your chances each time depending on the situation and pal. And then you can also use your weapons, which will lower its health health, thereby increasing your chance to capture it, and your pals can also damage them, and there'll be also items you can use, all in combination to make capturing pals a more interesting and engaging experience. But having a bow and arrow is freaking awesome. I can't wait to go hunting for Pokemon. I mean pals with a bow and arrow and guns, rocket launches. It's going to be wild. And as you do, you'll notice, you'll get to sort of a good percentage where you're in the range of being able to capture it. So you might say throw a Pokeball at where it's 60% chance of capturing it, and you still might be able to capture it at 60%. Doesn't necessarily mean you can't capture it, but it just means there's a more likely chance that it will stick the closer to 100% capturability you get, if that makes sense. Different weapons will increase capture chances more so on their different pal. So there's going to be a lot of learning in terms of being the most efficient at smashing this capture chance to 100% as quick as possible. So this kind of changes a little bit to Pokemon, because we'll be able to see a lot more easier how we're tracking with the capture process, which I do like. And this clip also gives us an idea to some of the weapons that we'll be seeing. We'll be seeing lots of rifles, automatic rifles, rocket launchers, grenade launchers. We can even use certain pals and pick them up and use them themselves as weapons. A good example of this is Fox Pack. You can pick up and use as a flamethrower. I mean, that kind of reminds me, I don't know if you ever remembered a game called Postal, where you could pick up a cat and put it on your silencer. I know that sounds crazy and creepy, but man, that game was wild. But that's what's cool about Palworld. It adds a blend of elements from so many different genres, which is going to be tough to pull off, but I think they're going to get it. So that's kind of a good idea of how the capture process will work. There's going to be more elements and more difficulty and tactics, strategies involved in it, but it gives us a starting spot. And it's probably a good time to also mention that in Palworld, pals will have unique skills and abilities that play a significant role in the gameplay. Here's what we know about what they call partner skills and active skills. So the partner skill, this will mean that pals possess a partner skill that are unique to their species. For example, we do have some evidence of this in a video from the official Palworld site. We have Pyrin as a partner skill that turns all the players' attack into fire attacks, which means this is going to be more beneficial and do more damage against, say, maybe a leaf type, making you more like a super effective against different types. So this is another really cool combination or anchor point that drives this awesome synergy by using different pals to achieve better outcomes. Partner skills can provide various buffs and enhancements to players' abilities, and this is again going to depend on all the different pals that you're partnered with. Then there are active skills. Pals also have access to active skills. We do have some insight into this. Pals like Anubis can have up to 3 active abilities. It is a bit unclear at the moment. This is the standard number for all pals. I don't think so. I think it's just going to be the stronger pals will have more active abilities and the weaker pals will have less. These active abilities will most likely be used in combat, and I'm also on speculation here thinking that it will have an active ability that, say, might help you farm faster, produce goods, or build faster. But basically what an active skill would translate to is that it will be pretty much constantly active. It's not a passive skill. And this will also mean that these active skills are probably ones that you can select yourself, say Anubis, to be using. What I'm hoping is that there'll be a wide range of active abilities that Anubis can learn, but you can only have a few selected at a certain time, and then you can actively select which ones you want him to use. You will be able to teach your pals new skills as well, and this is not only by leveling up, which we'll cover in more detail later. Leveling up, I mean by training them. We'll also, as players, be able to teach pal new skills, which they might not naturally learn from leveling up. An example of teaching a new skill to a pal is something called the skill fruit. This is one of the few items that we know about. These fruits can be found throughout the world, and each contain a specific skill. We do have an example of this. You can see here, we found a skill fruit, and our pal or us can collect it. And in this case, it has a skill called Destruction Beam. This skill can be imparted to a pal by using respective skill fruit. Basically, we can apply this just like a TM from Pokemon. Again, adds another element of all the varied possibilities. And so while we're on the topic of capturing pals and throwing spheres, it's really important to know that at the moment, there are only 3 distinct types of pals, each with unique characteristics. So your alpha pals, these are large and powerful variants, akin to like bosses in the game. Alpha pals stand out due to their size and strength. Players will have the opportunity to capture these alphas, which is going to be adding a whole realm of challenging and massive reward for the gameplay aspect. And you're going to have your lucky pals. This type of pal is characterized by a shining appearance, setting them apart from regular pals, but there will be a unique visual distinction, which we'll be able to easily tell, which will suggest that they have a special significance. They are very rare and considered to be very strong compared to the regular pals. This implies that they have a much superior fighting ability and stats, making them very much of an attractive catch. So if you ever find them, grab them. And you'll sometimes find that lucky pals will be a little bit larger than their other counterparts. This combined with their glowing appearance should definitely make them stand about. In terms of their abilities, there's nothing sort of specific I can give you just yet, but they're just going to be bigger, better, and you definitely want to keep an eye out for them. And third and finally, so the fusion pals. But before we go into the fusion pals, it's going to be very helpful to understand that there are 9 different element types of pals, and we're just going to go through those, and we'll come back to fusion and breeding. And that's because understanding the elements and how they impact Palworld kind of instrumental to then understanding breeding and the purpose for breeding. Okay, so you might be wondering what kind of different types or element types are there in Palworld? Well, there's the fire. Pals with the fire element can heat campfires, cook in pots, and operate industrial ovens. Name some of the things they can do. The electricity types. These pals can power on generators, which will help fuel your economy of your base, your production lines. So you can start to see here how we're going to be needing certain different pals to construct our own cities, our own buildings, if you will. Then there's the dragon type. The exact abilities of dragon element pals are still not yet specified to my knowledge, but they are likely to possess unique and powerful traits. Then we'll have the grass sort of type. They'll have specific abilities that aren't exactly detailed again yet, but I definitely think these will be more leaning towards like your preferred gardeners or growers or healers or farmers. There is a natural element as well, which will again have affinity with the natural environment. Still not 100% sure how that's going to work, but again, it will have its own use cases. Then we're going to have earth element. The earth element pals might have the abilities, break rocks, move them, and possibly also help with the farming process. Then we have pals with the water element. Water element pals can manage tasks like involving watering plants, and I'm sure there's going to be other things. And then there's the dark elements. Not too sure exactly yet, but I'm guessing they'll have unique and hidden abilities. And also apparently there's going to be a frost element as well. So these elements are going to be really important because they are crucial to determine the specific roles and benefits each pal can provide. This will be, such things as aiding in resource production or other specialized tasks. Keep in mind that each pal can have up to 2 elements. So for example, you might have a fire and electric or dark and a dragon, which really spices it up of the different variations and practicalities of pals. Now, even though that you can have up to 2 element types, the majority of the base pals you get are just going to have 1. A crossbreeding, which we'll come to soon, that's going to open the window up to be getting certain types that don't usually have 2 different element types to then have the application of having 2 different element types. This is where this is going to just be kind of brain numbing with all the possibilities, because it's basically you'll be able to really fine tune what roles you want pals to fulfill. So with understanding the elements and how that is going to change how we use our pals to create, garden, farm, manufacture, build, get resources, then we can move on to one of the coolest probably aspects I think is going to be this fusion, or aka breeding, where your pals make a love in order to breed specific traits, abilities, potent powers, and I'm sure there's more to it. Now, there's some caveats to this. There's over 350 items. In a bit, I'll go through what information we do have, but it's limited. So there's going to be a big aspect here that will probably rely on certain items helping within the breeding process or the fusion process. There's something to keep in mind. But basically, let's just go over the fusion. So fusion pals can be created by breeding 2 specific species or of pals together. This process will combine their characteristics of the parent pals to create a new type of pal. Now, I don't necessarily think it's going to change the appearance. It might either be parent 1 or parent 2, but its stats and abilities, and most importantly, its element types will be changed. It might have 2 element types, which will make it much more dynamic in what it can do and how it can serve you. So there are types of fusion pals. It could either be an elemental pal, which will presumably inherit the combined element traits from its parents, or it could result in a completely different pal species. So this in itself could potentially mean, and this is where it gets a little bit dark, that perhaps certain scenarios will create a new type of pal, but whether it looks different or not is going to be the question we're going to have to find out closer to when we get to finding this information out. So how do you actually breed pals? Well, there's not a lot of exact details, but what we know is that they can breed just by being next to each other. There'll be like a little animation that sort of tells us that they're breeding. And I'd maybe throw in a speculation here that they might be like breeding chambers for some of the more complex scenarios of maybe cross species, but that's to be confirmed. It's assumed that to get them to breed, they'll need to be quite happy, well fed, just the usual things that makes you want to breed, I guess. Breeding system in Palworld allows players to experiment with different combinations of pals to create fusion pals, but the important thing is it's going to inherit characteristics, and I'm sure there's going to be the mix of throwing in items during the breeding process, which will then change and yield different results possibly. We'll have to wait and see on this one. But what we can certainly speculate on is that you want to get some of the most powerful pals in the game. I'm definitely thinking, you're going to be looking for those alpha pals, breeding them with another alpha pal, making sure that they're at 100% happiness or 100% contentness, because that apparently will impact as well some of the transfer of stats and abilities when pals are breeding. So while we're talking about pals contentness, let's have a look at a little bit of insight that we have into the UI of when we're looking at a pal. So looking at the interface, we can see straight away that we have the inventory, party, technology, Paldeck, guide, and option. So the inventory, that's obviously going to be where we have our weapons, items, and we do have a screenshot of what that looks like. You can see on the left-hand side, that's where all our items will be, our weapons, accessories, food. There is a glider too. There's also a shield, don't know too much about that. And then we have some sort of armor or our body clothing, and then our head dressing or armor or clothing, which does lead me to believe that there will be different clothing options and items you'll be able to get for your aesthetic appearance. You can also see our player level. Not only will our pals level up, so will we, which will increase our health and our stats. And as our player levels up, I'm sure that will give us access to ways of getting better technology. So crafting better, crafting more advanced things, buildings, farming. And you can see that we have stamina, attack, defense, work speed, and weight. Now, ideally, you want bad work speed because you want all your pals doing all the work or something like that. Then the party option, then clicking on the party tab actually will reveal your pals and the ones you currently have with you, I believe. And this is where we'll see everything we can about that specific pal that we have under our command. We'll come back to this. And then there's the technology tab. Now, we don't really have a lot of insight into it, but what is assumed is that this is the tab you'll be using to progress your technology as you develop yourself with learning how to craft new weapons, say going from bare fists, then getting certain resources to craft a bow. And then from that bow, you might be able to get better Pokemon that then can help craft more advanced things. But basically what we surmise so far is that this technology tab will have to do with leveling up your weapons, your crafting skills. And outside that, we don't have a lot of information. One of the other aspects to Palworld is obviously pals and crafting. Cool aspect about this is it heavily involves your creatures, heavily involves your pals. Let's do a quick breakdown of how crafting will work in Palworld. Pals will be able to aid the player in creating various items, including weapons and gear. You'll be able to get your pals building buildings themselves, working in production lines. Basically, a lot of freedom is given here. You'll also be able to farm, harvest, gather. Now, this is where and the elemental types will come into this. Different element types for pals will be used for different crafting tasks. For example, we know that fire will be used for cooking and operating ovens, produce food. You'll be able to get pals to go and gather resources for you to craft and build all the things that you need. But you will need to level up and slowly build on your crafting skills. Not something you can just go and build everything at once. You'll have to earn it and work for it. Linked into the level progression, which will lead on to the pal cooking. So you'll be able to cook a diverse range of different foods and items, and your pals can help with cooking. You will need to collect ingredients for cooking. You might even be able to cook your own pals. Cooking and food will be quite important in Palworld because you need to feed not only yourself but your Pokemon to keep them happy, keep their stamina and energy up, because that will impact them in the battles and within the game world, how well they perform, how hard they work. So quite an intricate system there, which then also comes into this extreme scenario where you can actually eat your own pals to get health and food, which is a really cool mechanic. I love this idea. Turning on your Pokemon pal just to then nom 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 and eat them. This will be more for like dire situations for some, or for others they might just snack them on them all the time. This definitely adds a much darker but more of a realistic survival element to the game. But it does emphasize how harsh this world can be, so it's definitely something we all might have to do. The ethical dilemma for some people might be too much. I don't know, we'll see. Another important aspect is you can work your pals to the bone. But basically, if you overwork your pals, not only can they die from battle, but they can die from being overworked. Maybe even if their sanity drops to 0, I think that might also drive them crazy, potentially killing them. So there's a few ways you can lose your pals. So there's going to be some very awesome balancing of morals here. The Paldeck is definitely just going to be like your Pokedex. This will be providing details like the species, abilities, all the relevant information. So something we're accustomed to there. Next, we have guilds. Be that cool opportunity where you and your friends can jump on a server and make your own guilds. And there's just the options. Don't know what that will too much be about, but I'm guessing that's just your generic kind of options. But now focusing on Anubis, we can see at the top left here, we have the 4 stars. Now this is a very interesting and unusual mechanic that's built into Palworld, where you basically, you collect pals, but you are also collecting their souls. So what you can do is you can collect a ton of the same Anubis kind of pal, and then infuse other Anubis souls into a single Anubis. We actually have some bit of an insight into this. There's these pal concentrators. So you'll probably have to be quite a substantial level or a decent level to be able to construct this. But when you get into the menu, you can see here we have the party. We currently have 2 pals, and then underneath we have box 1. You can see we can have hundreds and hundreds of pals. But it looks like by clicking on Anubis, we can see all the different Anubises we have. And what we can do is we can click on these Anubis, basically extract them and concentrate them into the Anubis we want to power up, thus giving them an extra star, which will boost a lot of their stats. And I believe you'll need more Anubises to get each star. So to get 4 stars, you're going to need a freaking ton of Anubis to really max out all the stats. And again, this will be something interesting to consider when you're trying to breed Pokemon. So to go into that a bit further, you actually get to select what you want to enhance. So we can enhance the health, the attack, the defense, work speed. There does also look like there is a chance to reset and then readjust. And then once you're happy with your selection, you'll be able to click the enhance pals ability. So going back to Anubis, so we can see is level 5. Now to level up the primary way, we'll be just using pals for battle. They gain XP, their stats will increase, very similar to Pokemon. So we won't go into too much of the combat and how that works because it's be similar to a degree to what we're accustomed to. There is this green looking thing with the +0 next to it. I'm not sure if that's a bomb or an item. Can't tell you anything about that, sorry. We will be able to edit the pal's name. As you can see, there's the edit button, and you can also see the sex right next to the edit button. So in this case, this Anubis is a female. Under that, we can see how many points to get to the next level, which is really cool. So we'll be able to track how it's progressing to level up. We can also note that it specifies the ground type. You can also see that it specifies its elemental type, which is ground or earth. Here we can see the partner skill, which we've talked about before. This is a unique ability for Anubis. So this will give you a ground attack. So perhaps this will be a better Pokemon to verse a water type. After that, below that, we have the active skills, which we've touched on again. So when you're in battle, Anubis is just going to go out and use these. Now the amount and how often he uses these different active skills, don't think we know entirely how that will work. But basically these should always be active and he'll just do them by himself. And then we have the passive skills. Will most likely be always on, or we can turn them on and they will just be the passive skills, probably being automatic and kind of always on. You won't have to worry about them. They'll just be applied. We don't have any examples of this just yet, so come back to this. And one of the more interesting thing about looking at this is that there's that Sanity, which we've mentioned will probably impact how the fusion results will turn out. And Sanity is going to be most likely related to how hard they worked, what kind of conditioning you're putting them through, how often they're battled. So there'll be probably quite a complex aspect built around Sanity. We obviously can see that there's the health in the green bar at 825, and then under that I believe that's the food, so it looks like it's quite full. There will be an aspect of feeding your pals. You can also see the status, so we can see at level 5 the attack, defense and work speed. So obviously the higher the level they are, the more attack, defense and work speed will increase. This may be subject to certain pals that might not increase work speed speciality. The coolest thing is that we can quite easily and clearly see what suitable work Anubis is for, and that's handiwork, transport and mining. Now do note, even though he's level 5, his handiwork, transport and mining are lower than his current level, and we could probably speculate or quite easily assume that the more handiwork, mining and transport they do will increase that level. Now the question will be, can they exceed the level 5 or exceed the level that they're on? I kind of hope so, but not certain about that just yet. And then at the very bottom we can see their energy level. This energy thing at the bottom here sort of indicated by a similar symbol to the one under the health bar. I believe it will relate to how much energy it's exerted, so perhaps that will impact how well it can fight, how much damage it does, or how efficient its work will be. But that's me speculating. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to talk quickly about the weather and the environments and biomes. Palworld's expansive world is a mosaic of environments, from scorching deserts to tranquil forests. Each biome is alive with unique challenges and, of course, your PAL inhabitants and potentially your NPCs. In these biomes, there'll be over 100 types of creatures, roaming across a varied terrains, which will include snowy mountains, vast plains, and even volcanoes. And each biome is not just a backdrop, but a playground for exploration and discovery, teeming with secrets and special PALs. There'll also be dynamic weather and changing environment conditions, which will play a crucial role into the journey. They also throw in a layer of realism and unpredictability, challenging you to adapt to everything from harsh climates to strategic terrain advantages. There'll be a lot more to the environment and weather to the game than probably what we realize. And beyond the surface, there's also dungeons hidden throughout the world, offering hidden treasures and unique powers as rewards for those that dare to explore for them. The other thing to mention is that we know that the Palworld is approximately 16 squared kilometers, difference in size. This size may feel different to the players depending on how fast they're moving around within the game. So be aware, if you're on a very fast Pokemon, obviously the world's going to feel a lot smaller. And if you're moving slowly, it will seem quite big. But by all means, this is nothing to the size of, say, a game like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. But it's still a substantial area to explore. And again, this more biomes and stuff will be added, as well as unique weather and biomes. Each biome is going to have a hostile faction base, which will contain other NPCs that you can fight with your pals and weapons. So there'll be a variety of different factions. We have very little information on this at this point in time, but do know there will be some other enemy NPCs that you can battle within each of the rich biomes. Really looking forward to this aspect to see how it goes and how it's implemented, and gives us the opportunity to battle some NPCs that have pals, as we won't have PvP. This will also heavily tie into this concept of poachers, which is probably very similar to these factions. It's another primary antagonist group, perhaps separate from these other enemy factions found in areas. And these poachers are equipped with tanks, firearms, and present a really significant threat to both the player and pals. Some things that are hinted is that these conflicts with the poachers is that there might be some moral grey area. I think with poaching as well, we can also do our own poaching, but don't quote me on that. But do know we will be able to team up and take on these poaches, aka kind of like challenges with our mates. So there is quite a big economy aspect to Palworld. You'll be able to trade with merchants. Merchants are present in various cities around the game world. But yes, there will be cities and towns. Players can interact with these merchants to buy or sell items, much like traditional RPGs. You can also sell captured pals. This is really cool. Players have the option to sell pals that they've captured. This can be a source of profit, allowing players to earn in-game currency by trading the pals they've caught or raised. So I bet the higher the level, the bigger, the better, the more money you will make. Really cool economic factor in this. I think this is a brilliant step in the right direction. There is a regulation on trading pals though. It's important to note that trading of pals is sometimes prohibited by public laws within the game world. This is very interesting. This implies that there are ethical considerations, perhaps in-game legal frameworks that govern the sales of pals. So I believe you might be able to trade them depending on the area or the town, how bad they are or how they're sort of aligned. And the economic system of Palworld is designed to be engaging and enjoyable. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this video. And this last section, we're just going to devote to the frequently asked questions, just so we can say we've covered everything. This will help you understand what's to be expected at launch. I will probably also cut this and make it its own video, but let's go from the top. Now, we obviously know that Palworld is being released on the January 19th. It will be available on Steam, Xbox, Game Pass, and obviously Windows, Steam Windows. Not sure how it goes on the handheld Steam console things, so not too sure about that, sorry. Now for the cost, how much is Palworld going to cost? It's going to cost $29.99 during early access. This is obviously going to vary depending on your regional currency. So for me, it's probably about $50, which this price will be accepted by people depending on how good the game is. Obviously, we'll have to go through that process of vetting it. I have paid $30 getting scanned by some indie game, a strategy game called Commanding Nations. I have a much higher hope, and I think Palworld is going to blow our brains out with how good it is. But there's going to be a lot of features that are going to be needed, and it's going to need to be refined. So I'm expecting launch to be half-half. People are going to love it, people are going to hate it. But that's besides the point. So another question people often ask is, will there be new pals and areas added to Palworld? Yes, most definitely. Palworlds will continue to be updated during and after early access. They're going to share the roadmap of their development plan, which will be about 1 year plan, which will be released shortly after the game release. So we'll expect new biomes, new pals, and new ways to capture pals. And this is probably where we'll also get PvP servers to be added, because that's going to happen post-launch, which goes on to the next question. Is there PvP in Palworld? So PvP will not be supported at the initial release. However, they are currently testing and experimenting with the PvP internally. This is just to try and find the right sort of way PvP will work. If you're building a game like this, it's going to be tricky on how it's going to balance and work and make it actually an enjoyable experience. So much to consider. Next question is, does Palworld support crossplay between Xbox and Steam? Not at launch. So there is no crossplay at launch, but they say they're working towards it, and it should be as soon as possible. So this means at launch, you're going to have to sort of pick between Xbox or PC. Now for you PS5 people out there, unfortunately, there's no plans to release it onto PS5 yet. Maybe considered down the track, but nothing right now. So don't keep your hopes up there. You're just going to have to jump on PC, or if you have both, Xbox. What about language support for Palworld? It's going to be pretty limited in early release stage. They do plan to support it more and continue to develop language support, but that's going to be down the track. There might be the opportunity for mods to fill in this language gap, but I'm not too sure what languages will be available at launch, but we definitely know English will be one of them. And does Palworld support controllers on PC? Absolutely. Can Palworld be played offline and in single player? Yes, you absolutely can play Palworld both offline by yourself and online with friends. And how will multiplayer work with Palworld? You can play Palworld with up to 3 friends by starting a multiplayer game and inviting them. So there's no split screen or anything like that for Xbox. You'll have to host a game, they'll have to join it. But beyond this, you can create a dedicated server of up to 32 players. We'll come to the server specifications in a sec. They will provide the tools to create these servers at launch, and there will also be official servers being managed by them. You'll be able to join those straight off the bat, or you can host your own private one. So I imagine you'll be able to go in there, click host, and host your own private server using their servers possibly, or it's just that same method of creating your own and hosting your own 32 player server. Another big one for me was, can you use your single player character in multiplayer too? So this needs some work, so it's partially a yes. Your character is bound to your world and is not shared across servers or single player. However, if you are the host of a co-op game, you can switch between single player and multiplayer freely. So they do plan to provide server save transfer method later during development. So this is going to be one of those things that people will probably get annoyed about at the start. This is kind of a really crucial kind of aspect to the game, because you're going to lose your character and all your progression anytime you jump to a different server. So this is going to be a high point of contention. A lot of people are going to find this difficult and annoying. But basically what you do want to try to do is stick to a certain server or create your own and stick to that server. Because if you do leave and go join another server, you're starting from scratch, and it doesn't seem like if you then go back to that other server you're on that you'll have all that progress still. So there's going to be a lot more needs to be fleshed out about this. This will probably deserve its own video coming soon. Does Palworld support modding and the Steam Workshop? That Steam Workshop support won't be available straight away, but they do plan to add it post-launch. Palworld is in Unreal Engine 5, which is awesome, and they're excited to see what mods will be able to be drummed up. So I'm really keen and interested to see how this modding aspect will work, because that will be able to add so many extra features and really expand Palworld to the whole other universal level. And another question I ask is this game a scam? And absolutely not. Like I said, I got scammed before buying an indie game for $30 that's never even been complete, and it's just a shell of a nonsense. But anyway, let's have a look at some of the server details now. So the information we have on creating your own Palworld server does seem to exist online already, but I'm not 100% certain we can lock into this and say this is exactly what we're going to need. But we've got here the server requirements: Windows 10 or 11, 64-bit with a quad-core process, requires up to 2 full cores, up to 4 gig memory, 12 gigabyte of disk space. But I'm suggesting you probably want something a bit more beefy than that, but maybe not. We'll have to see. So we can see here, we can get fetching the game server files. There's some instructions here. I'll put this link in the description so you can go have a look at this. There is also the potential of renting a Palworld server, but that's coming soon, and I'll let you just go through that instructions, but at least we have some of the information there and some of the minimum requirements. Now the system requirements for Palworld, or the minimum requirements of Palworld, I'll just throw them up here just so you can get an idea, and I'll leave this up as I say. Thank you very much for watching. Try to include everything I can. Some of it's speculative, some of it's very informative. It's a bit of a mixture of everything, but I spent a lot of time and effort into this, so if you did get anything out of this, please consider liking and subscribing. Hope it was useful to some, at least a point of reference. Maybe went a little bit overboard, but thanks very much. I'll catch you next time. Peace.